The basic idea behind ASP.NET Core MVC is to create applications with lightweight and modular components. The focus is on that each component will do one thing well. In order to accomplish this, it makes use of a design pattern called dependency injection. Now, dependency injection encourages loose coupling between components. For instance, if we look at the current example that we have, here our configuration thing is tightly bound, and we can see that we are ensuring a couple of things like from where this environment setting will be coming up. For instance, over here, this setting is being read from a JSON file. It would be very nice if we can have just one class with an attribute which is like enable exception, and based on that it is suggesting which page to show. If it's true, let's show the developer exception page. If not, just show the custom error page. It doesn't matter from where the values are coming. Is it being read from a configuration setting file like ASP.NET Core configuration setting, or from a JSON file? So in order to do that, here I've created one class and I've called it as settings class, and this is having one attribute enable exception. Now, in order to make use of dependency injection, whenever this method will be called, we will be injecting these settings. So here, let's say this is the class that we are injecting. Now all we need to do is, where I've kept the breakpoint, I'll comment that thing, and here I'll just write if settings dot enable exception, and if it is true, then obviously the user developer exception page will be shown, otherwise we'll be showing the custom error page. Now if I run this one, let's see what happens. You'll notice it is throwing an exception over here and error code while starting the application. The reason is this instance that we are trying to access is not yet created. Now how we can create an instance over here which will be passed to this configure method? We'll have to go to configure services. Now here in our configure services, we'll be making use of the service parameter dot add, and it has got a couple of methods like add transient, add scoped, add singleton. Now using these three methods, we can create an instance of a class, and then that class can be injected in the configure method. Now what is the difference between these methods, add singleton, add transient, add scoped? If we talk about add transient, using this method creates the shortest lifespan. So basically we are creating an instance every time. Whenever a request comes up, a new instance will be created and it will be then passed on to the configure method. Now if we want to create a single instance, then we have two ways of doing it. One being add scoped. Now when we talk about add scoped, that means a single instance will be created for each scope. Now in ASP.NET Core MVC, the scope is almost always the current web request. Now in this scope, one can share the state between different components. So throughout the request, we have the facility of sharing state between different components. Then comes add singleton. Now this creates a single instance for the entire application, and using this we can share state across requests. So it's not limited to a single request lifespan. It is available for all the requests that comes in. So that is the difference between add scoped and add singleton. Over here I'll be making use of add transient, and here all I need to do is pass the name of the class settings like this, and that is all. Now let's run this and see what happens. And here you can see when I'm accessing exception, it is throwing this page that is a custom error page. Now why it is doing so? Because here when I'm saying settings enable exception, obviously there's nothing in this variable, and that's why it's treated as false, and use exception handler is then taking care of the error page. So how we will be able to read this configuration data now in our settings page? For that, first of all, we'll have to create a constructor. So let's do that. Here we have our constructor, and this configuration data we'll be taking from here. We'll be putting it inside this. We'll be removing it from here. We'll be defining this configuration as a read-only value, and here environment, so this iHosting environment we'll be taking from here as well, and we'll be passing it in the constructor. Now we have everything in place, so we have our configuration available now. When we are creating this services.addTransient settings, we can ensure that it gets the values of the configuration. So here I'll say new settings, and inside this I'll be having enable exception equals to, here we'll be just copying this whole thing and we'll be assigning it over here. So all we are doing is reading it from the configuration get bool, and this is the value being read from the JSON file and assigned to this enable exception. Now whatever value is there, it will be assigned, and here it will be accessible. So let's run it now, and here you can see the error page is still coming as custom error, and the reason for that is we have our enable exception set to false. Let's stop the application, set the value to true, and run it again, and there you go. We are now getting the developer exception page. So that was dependency injection in short. We'll be obviously exploring more on this in upcoming lectures.